Welcome back to Let's Talk Careers. My name is Miss V. Today we are speaking with Rob Houben, who is a former school leader wanting to change the education system. He's an entrepreneur and a public speaker. We're going to be talking about all things Rob, talking more about what he does and how he wants to change the face of our education system. Welcome, Rob. It's so great to have you with me today.
Well, thank you. Good morning.
Super excited. We're zooming around the world again today, and we're in the Netherlands. You have to know it's a very popular destination for higher education with the youth in the United Arab Emirates, with many, many reasons involved. So it's so exciting to have you here. We're definitely going to be talking a little bit about what it's really like to live in the Netherlands, because I think that's something that young people never really hear about from someone living in the country. So before we jump into anything to do with all those big, great missions and visions that you have for the future, I want to take you on a journey back to being a teenager. I know that you were interested in maths. What did you think you wanted to do when you were younger? And when you look back now, do you ever kind of go, wow, that is very different? Or yeah, definitely, it was exactly what I wanted to be doing.
Well, that's a great question. Well, first of all, my teenager years at school really sucked. So as a primary student, I had these great visions of the future. I wanted to become an architect or a doctor, or I had these great dreams. And I've done really well in the primary system. And then I went into secondary with very high hopes. And within 3 weeks in secondary education, my parents got a phone call and they got told, it's nice that you have all these high hopes, and it's nice that primary school had you aim this high, but Rob is actually a special needs kid and he has to go to a special needs school at the lowest level. So that was quite a bubble breaker, a dream breaker. And of course, we asked why, and it became a big struggle when I was 12 at the school where I was. My parents were like, okay, then he has to go to another school. So they tried to enlist me as a special needs kid. But the special needs kid school said, no, he can't be enlisted here. He's too smart. And well, that took almost a year. And the end of the story was that I could stay in this school that I was already in. And they had to accept the fact that I was dyslexic, but still was able to do great stuff. And well, that made my world and my future perspective very small. So I think I can honestly say that I got bullied at school by the school. And that's why I ended up studying mathematics, because after 5 years of 6 years of secondary education, I thought the only thing I was good at was doing mathematics, and I couldn't do anything else. Well, when you can't do anything else and you love to work with people, there is only one solution, ending up in an attic as a mathematics professor. That's how I looked at it when I was 15. And the other thing is becoming a mathematics teacher. And so I hated school and had to stay in the system because I only saw one way out, becoming a mathematics teacher.
That's really, listening to you say that, and I'm just thinking many parents would have been told exactly what you were told. Even today, they're still being told, yeah, it's great to have aspirations, but you know what? We need to be more realistic with your children. As an educator myself, Rob, and a practitioner, I now look at this conversation. It's really two conversations. On the one hand, it's Rob didn't fit their system of education, but it didn't mean that you didn't have so much potential. And now looking at you today, it's very obvious that you have so much potential and you're achieving that potential. But on the other hand, schools like the school that you had could have said, this system is not the right system. Let's work together and try and find a better system. Do you now look back at times like that and think, how could that have been handled different? And if it had, maybe my future would have looked different. Or do you now look back at that and say, you know what, that was a horrible way to kind of bring myself into the adult world, but it made me and shaped me who I am today?
Well, of course, all your questions are right answers. Your history makes you to what you are today. So that's the same with me. Did they hurt me a lot? Yes, they hurt me a lot. They were even having conversations about if Rob is going to have a burnout within the next half of the year, that would prove this and that would prove that. Well, when I heard that years afterwards, that grown-ups were talking about me like about a 12-year-old kid, well, that hurts a lot. And in my opinion, that's child abuse. Just to prove a point, you know. Do I want myself to be abused to get to where I am today? No, absolutely not. Am I today because where I am because of this? Yes, absolutely. Didn't strengthen my opinion? Yes, it did. Would have been an education if all of this had not had happened? I don't think so. Would have been a public speaker about what has to change in education, and would have been involved in the school where we have changed a lot of these things to not only make sure that kids don't get treated like this, but to get kids in a situation that they can excel. I don't think that I would have been in this situation if they didn't put me in the previous situation.
So tell me more about your vision on how you think schools should be changing, and tell me why you think that you might have it better in your mind in terms of that vision.
Well, first of all, I must emphasize that I don't believe that there are elements in education that we shouldn't be there. All of the elements that we have, all the building blocks in education are, in my opinion, the right building blocks. But I also believe that there are more building blocks, and I believe that the problem that we have is the way we approach and organize education. Because the way we organize education is how Ken Robinson really put it into his stories as well. We put kids into batches, and we aim at the average kid, and we make a program for the average kid. Well, I've been speaking to parents a lot. I've been speaking to big audiences a lot. And when I have like 500 parents in the room, or 500, well, everybody is a parent, also when you're talking to 500 teachers. And I ask them, okay, please stand up if you believe you have an average kid. Nobody stands up. So everybody knows that the average kid doesn't exist. But we organize our schools like we organized factories 150 years ago. And I believe that is a big problem. I believe that kids like me get mistreated by the system, because if kids like me can't keep up in the system, educators are forced to label these kids. So they have to be autistic, or they have to be dyslexic, or they have to be whatever. And then they can treat them different. That's what I hear a lot when I visit schools, and what I've seen in my own schools in the past. But what really happens is not that they treat them different. They're going to emphasize more on the things that they can't do, instead of looking for what they can do. So, and if you have rich parents, it sucks even more, because they also get help for you after school. So that means that they emphasize more on the things you can't do. Well, if people with kids emphasize what you can't do a lot, and spend a lot of time and energy in that, they never find your future goal. And when what you are studying is not connected to your personal future goal, then your energy gets down, your motivation gets down. So what I see a lot is that we then end up with kids at the age of 15, which have this talk at the school. And the school tells them, you are not motivated, and you should be. Well, the school made sure that these kids aren't motivated, because they pressed on their incapabilities for 10 years. And then when they are 15, they say, you are responsible for your own motivation. So then they turn the table suddenly, and these kids don't know how to act because they never got the chance to have influence themselves.
Such a big conversation. You're really singing the tune to my favorite song, is how are we preparing the youth for their future, and how are we supporting them on that journey? I know that you, one of your highlights is graduating besides all the obstacles that came up in school for you. How does that look different for a young person who might be taking a similar path to the one you took, but happening today?
Well, maybe I should address these kids first. And what I would say to every student and to every teacher is that make sure that you know where you can excel in, and make sure that you do that more often every day. Because when you are excelling in something, you can compensate the things that you're not excelling in, and you find new ways to get there as well. So for instance, I'm speaking in English at the moment. I never scored more than 4 out of 10 for English in my whole career at school. But as soon as I got into education and people wanted to hear what I wanted to say, and they got me the chance to speak English instead of writing English, I spoke more English and my writing skills improved as well. But at my primary and secondary school, I never had the chance to do it in that order. I never had the chance to speak about something that I loved to speak about and then write it down. It was always the opposite. You had to write something down about something that you didn't like, and you never got the chance to speak about it. So you can excel in a lot of things if you take the path by going to what you want to excel in. Do that first, and then the rest will come, and it will facilitate your dreams. But you first have to find, what is my dream for today, or what is my dream for this month, or my dream for 2 years, or my dream for a career. And I think technology helps a lot, because at the moment we have access to all the resources in the world almost. And far more important, we have access to all the people behind these resources. And that's where the magic happens. If you can use the internet to connect to the people behind the resources, because they are always 2 or 3 years ahead on what you are really reading about. And if you can have those personal relations and look for that, then you can learn way more than you can learn by reading a book. Of course, you should be reading books to get to know these people and to make sure that you ask them the right questions.
Let's go back to your current role in your company. Tell us more about the company. What's the mission, and what are some of the action steps that you and the company are taking to recreate what education should look like for a student preparing for the future?
Yeah. Well, I've been working at a great school in the south of the Netherlands since 2015. That school is called Agora. And in that school, we the 5 of us in 2015 got a simple assignment, which was very hard to do. The school board gave us the job to prepare kids in secondary education for the Dutch national exams. But we weren't allowed to put them into classes. We weren't allowed to divide them into age groups. And we weren't allowed to make a school schedule which implicated that they had lessons all day. So we had to leave these 3 things out of it. So what we started doing there is just asking kids, what do you want to make, do, or learn? And we hope that they say make, because if you want to make something, and that could be something, a shirt, but it could also be a skateboard. It could also be, I want to make a great event for the elderly in our neighborhood. If you want to make something, you are definitely going to do something, and you're definitely going to learn something. So we started with that question. And at first, our students had to get adjusted to that. Can we tell you what to do? We are in a school. Yeah, and you can, and we even hope that you want to do stuff that's not on a school timetable, just whatever you want. So then you get these kids who ask you, I would tell you, I want to make a skateboard. And I would say to them, okay, great. If you can explain me how to bend wood, we give you wood. If you can explain me how wheel bearings work, we even give you money to buy wheels for you. So that's how we approached it. And we developed onto that in the last 7 years, with the result that there now are 20 more school districts in the Netherlands copying what we are doing. And our kids are taking the national exam successfully. But what we actually were doing was that we were looking at these kids. What are your needs at the moment? What is your motivation? And how can I use your motivation to still make sure that you learn everything that you need to learn? And because of that, we got a lot of insights in career opportunities for these kids, because we really got to know them. It was always about their project. And of course, they weren't always on their own in that project. We tried to connect multiple projects. So what we saw there is that motivation is key. And what we also saw is that if you are fully committed and motivated, and it's really personal for you, that kids can do projects and learn stuff that amazes you. We had to get professors in to assist kids, because we couldn't assist them at that high level of craftsmanship. So we are learning that there. And since 2017, I became the team leader there. And the school grew. So last year, I had almost 50 or 40 employees. And the biggest problem we had was that we couldn't explain the outside world what we were doing, because we are in the public system. I got just enough money to be the team leader and to have teachers in there, and that was it. But we had a lot of outside demand on what are you doing? How are you achieving this? We want to learn this, etc., etc. Well, and within the public school domain, we couldn't answer all these questions. And that made me start my company. I also, when we went 5 years back in time, when they asked me to become a team leader, I always told the staff members, my coworkers, and the board that I only wanted to do it if my primary goal would be making myself obsolete. So then I had a sit down at the beginning of this, not school year, but normal year. So last January, February, and we started talking about, okay, how would that look like being obsolete? So what we've done now is that I've started my company to make sure that I can share all the knowledge we have with other schools and with everybody who's interested. And I'm still working at Agra, but then from a company perspective. So I'm the one who's going to write everything down, what we have learned, to share that with the world. So I have 2 jobs at the moment, still setting the new management up for success at Agora, writing down what we've learned there, and then I have a company to share all that knowledge.
So as an educator and a disruptor, my next question comes from my knowledge of education, but my passion for disrupting the system, because I'm very committed and driven to helping young people gain career readiness for their future. It sounded to me like you found an incredible way to make education meaningful and also motivate young people to want to do more. They chose their project and they chose it based on their worldview, what was important to them, what they wanted to be building. So there's some definite gems in terms of motivating young people, making them gain accountability and making them take ownership of their learning moving forward. And also it sounded like you opened the classroom doors to educators outside of the institution that would then come in as specialists, showing young people that one teacher may not have all the knowledge and that education is really a collaboration of professionals and community members. Amazing. But at the same time, it also sounded like you still had to adhere to where the problems exist. And that's the testing that we insist young people have to go through to take that next milestone. As now a global leader and a speaker and passionate about making sure that young people who might have the learning challenges that you had never have to face somebody telling them you're not good enough, you're not smart enough. How do you see that? Is it necessary that they still need to take those final tests? Like, is there in your vision a way to, abolish that unnecessary test taking or assessment? Because really, what are we assessing if we're using a model like the one that you created?
Yeah. Well, I believe I have two answers. First one, no. In my future perspective, testing isn't necessary in the way how we do it now. I speak to a lot of company owners as well. First thing they tell me is these kids come out of university or whatever, and then I have to teach them. That's what every company owner tells me. The first year we have to teach them everything. Well, then the testing wasn't reflecting what the company owner needs, is it? So for that goal, to be successful in a career, the testing at the end doesn't reflect what the companies are asking. Second, when I see how much people test children, it's ridiculous. It's really ridiculous. So fail anxiety is not something that is in the mind of children. It's created by education. Because if I test you a lot and you fail a lot, you will get fail anxiety. And if I test you a lot, you score a lot of straight A's, you will get fail anxiety as soon as you get a B. So I think we are creating a lot of these problems ourselves. So what is it about? Well, I believe what we are trying to educate students is to find a way to be a lifelong learner, a person who can develop themselves every single day. Because as you were saying, our economy and all the knowledge in the world is growing very rapidly. That means that a student now has to adapt like every other day to something new. In fact, they have to adapt every day to something new. So we have to make them great adapters. What we also need to do, in my opinion, is we have to learn them how they build a portfolio. Because that's what the company needs to see. 5 out of 10 for mathematics doesn't say anything if you want to be a chef cook in a kitchen, you know. So what the restaurant owner wants to know, if the restaurant owner doesn't care if you're suck at Pythagoras. The restaurant owner wants you to be good with leaders and daisy leaders and stuff like that. That's not visible on your diploma or in a test or in the test result. So it's more about building portfolios that prove that you are capable to do something and to perform at a certain level. The thing is that the people who have to judge that are teachers, and they haven't been in the company for 20 years. So that's why we use numbers. Then we believe everybody understands numbers, but as soon as we use a number, nobody knows what is behind the number anymore. So we have this strange status, and everybody feels okay when we use a number. But when I ask somebody, okay, what does it represent? Nobody knows it. So I believe businesses and education and businesses should be working together way more. Education started because industry needed people to come on time. And if I look at it from a European perspective, school started because of the industrialization. But when I look at the period after industrialization, and that started, in my opinion, like in the 1930s in countries like the Netherlands, schools got too much of a say in what they needed to do in the school. So at first they were there to serve the local industry, but then we came at that separation point that schools were serving themselves. And then in the Netherlands, in my opinion, we came in this point that school was serving society. So as soon as there was some kind of a problem with juveniles or whatever, or with the society in general, then the ministries decided that schools had to teach that as well. So we brought a lot into education that wasn't about preparing kids for their future anymore. It was about solving current problems. And I believe we have to go back to making kids ready for the future. And for that, we have to bring companies, foundations, etc., into education, working together from a very young age. So, for instance, I'm speaking at a local government this afternoon here in the south of the Netherlands, and I'm going to tell them that our children ride bikes a lot. At the age of 4, they start riding their bikes. I'm going to tell them that I believe that as soon as a kid rides the bike, he should know every company and foundation within biking distance. At the age of 5, you should be visiting local companies and local, just to see what are they doing? How, do I like stuff like that? Don't I like it? And as soon as they got older, they are able to ride the bike further. So at a certain point, they can ride the bike for 10 or 15 kilometers. Well, then you need to know all these companies. And that gives them not only a future perspective, but that also makes sure that the companies and the schools are working together. Because I believe, well, look at me. I'm in education for my whole life now. I've never had a job in a business. So what do I know about the future of 90% of my students? Almost nothing. And I'm still trying to teach them.
Yes, definitely. There's a lot to be spoken about in terms of how we're preparing the youth. I'm a big advocate of collaborative work. And actually, it's not just what you think or I think, it's actually what studies show. And if we're looking at any kind of policy that's written in terms of the future of economies of countries, we definitely see that career readiness is not just about one place or one institution. It's about collaborating with the world of work.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but you can't prepare a kid for a career when it sits in a classroom. It's such a strange situation. Education is the only time frame in a lifetime, and it's a short time frame, where we divide the worlds into topics. Everywhere else, after education, so these kids which are in my school, they're gonna be 100 years old. They have to live for 80 years in a world where all topics are connected. But to prepare them for this, we separate all the topics, put them in individual classes, and don't make those connections and don't send these kids out. Well, that's very strange in my brain.
It is very, very, very strange. But we are going to come back to you. Your top 3 career tips for a young person, you say, except for the fact that you never know it all, be honest and learn with others. Tell me more about what you mean by be honest. What does that mean for a young person beginning their career?
Well, I think being honest about what you are afraid of, what you think you're capable of, and what you want to learn is the most important value. For instance, in my previous careers, I emphasized a lot on children doing lectures in front of big groups. A year or 5 years ago, I realized that that makes people quite afraid to stand up onto an audience, speak to them, etc., etc. And in what situation do you put people then? You put them in a situation that they have to act like they know it all, but they studied the topic, so they know that they don't know it all. Yeah. Well, so what we do now is we invite kids to stand up and say, this is what I don't know, in front of a crowd. And you know, the result is that people in the crowd say, I know something about it. I can help you. I can help you with this part of that. I can help you with this. I can help you with this. So now what I see is happening is that if these kids and also grown-ups stand up in front of an audience and say, I don't know, then they get a lot of help. So now the kids in my school aren't that afraid anymore to speak in public because they talk about what they don't know. And they immediately get help. Well, so that's what I also mean with being honest. And being honest is also about teachers. We have to be honest about the fact that we don't know everything. We have to be very honest about the fact that what we know about the world is very, very, very small portion. And if we want to serve our kids properly, we should be very good at pointing kids to people who know. And those people, most of the times, are not in the schools.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. Okay, we're going to bring this incredible conversation to wrap. Walking in, you are also an entrepreneur. So let's briefly talk about what a young person with a great idea that aspires to open their own company should really know. Because on the outside, especially on social media, right now, you open up any entrepreneur's page and there's all these glossy images and videos of how flexible and wonderful the journey is, but we know behind the scenes, it really isn't like that every day. What should a young person be aware of if they do want to become an entrepreneur?
Well, I think I have to stay close to my own journey. And I never wanted to become an entrepreneur. So that's also a strange fact. I am one now, and that's because of the circumstances. So I wanted to change education. I can say that I've done that at a school. And then I wanted to make sure that a lot of people got the knowledge. And I saw only one way out, and that's becoming an entrepreneur. But before that point, because I wasn't able to share the knowledge, a lot of people were already contacting me. Like our school at a certain point had 60 replies on a weekly basis with people who wanted to know more about what we were doing. So the market was building, but nobody was able to help the market, And that's how I became an entrepreneur, because my first goal was making sure that more kids get greater learning experiences. So at the moment, I'm not struggling to set up my entrepreneurship. And the question maybe is why? And I can talk about that. Because well, there must be more ways to become an entrepreneur, but you can become an entrepreneur because you have a goal and want to do something and want to bring it out there in the world. And then you have to find the market, and you have to find the people, and you have to find a way to promote yourself, and you have to get in there, etc., etc., etc. What helped me a lot was the fact that I didn't want to be an entrepreneur, because and I was focusing on what are my capabilities, what am I good at. And I wanted. I've got a lot. I've got a lot of questions about doing keynotes in the past as well. And I always told people I only want to do keynotes about stuff that I've done, not about what I'm thinking, but the stuff that I really proved that I've done. So I focused on that. I focused on what are my skills, what am I good at, how can I make sure that this happens in the world, and that's why I worked at Agora and at my previous schools as well. And from there, that developed into entrepreneurship, because people started to find me because they saw what I was doing, or they saw what the school was doing and wanted to know who's behind that. So I never shouted. I haven't written a commercial, or I've never written a blog as a PR thing. Or the reason why I started my website, robhouben.com, was because I got a lot of questions in English, which weren't answered on our Dutch website of the school. So that's why I started to make my own website. So I focused on what can I do, and people found me from there, and that's how I got into entrepreneurship. And now I am an entrepreneur, and then I can say you still need to make sure or accept the fact that you still have to do your own administration and all these things that you don't like to do, and you still have to invest time in people which you don't know if you ever get paid for that or what it leads to. But in my opinion, you have to reserve like 1 or 2 days a week to spend time on things that you don't know what it leads to. Because most of the time, that's where you meet these great new people, learn a lot yourself, and also get new connections, which lead to something else in the future.
Incredible. Love it. Love it. Love it. Okay, Rom, this has been really insightful. I think if you're a young person watching this, what I'd like you to see is any of those limiting beliefs that you might have about yourself as an academic student does not define your future career. If you're a parent who's been told that your child is not doing well in the academic system, I hope that you're walking away from this conversation finally believing that their future career aspirations are not reliant on what one teacher says that they can do in an academic environment. And as an educator, I'm not saying that educators are doing a disservice to their children, to their students. What I am saying is we need to change this conversation. And I hope that you're walking away inspired because Rob Houben, an educator himself, has proven to us that education can be different while motivating young people to aspire for those future careers. Thank you for being with me today, Rob. And thank you, everyone, for watching. I will see you all at our next Let's Talk Careers with Miss V.
Thank you.